All right, so get ready, because today we are diving deep into the world of Shakespeare's sonnets. We're going to be using the complete works as our guide today. Now, I know sonnets can seem a little intimidating, but trust me on this one. There are some hidden gems and some surprising insights waiting for us. That just might change how you think about Shakespeare forever. And you know it's not all love and roses. Get ready for some obsession, aging, thoughts on mortality, and even what you might call a 16th century diss track.
Well, that's what I think is so captivating about the sonnets, is that they offer us this incredible glimpse into Shakespeare's inner world, his personal thoughts, his struggles. And I think it's a different kind of intimacy compared to the grand narratives and characters that we get from his plays.
Right. It's like we're getting a secret peek into his diary or something.
Yeah.
So how does this whole sonnet thing work? Remind me. What makes them so special in terms of their structure?
Each sonnet is like this perfectly crafted puzzle, or 14 lines long. And it's written in iambic pentameter. Think of it as a heartbeat rhythm. Each line has a specific pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. But that's just the beginning. The real magic is in the rhyme scheme. A, B, ab, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. It's like Shakespeare is setting up all these echoes and connections within the poem itself.
So he's not just pouring his heart out. He's doing it within this really specific form, which must have been super challenging. It's like composing a symphony.
Yeah.
But you can only use 14 notes.
Exactly. And it's within those constraints that some of the most powerful imagery and emotions emerge. One of the themes that really struck me is how Shakespeare portrays time. He's almost obsessed with its destructive power, especially when it comes to beauty, youth, and even memory.
Yeah. I remember reading Sonnet 2, and that line about 40 winters besieging someone's brow really stuck with me. It's such a vivid image of time etching lines on our faces, Like, I'm only in my 30s, but that line made me feel the weight of every passing year.
It is a powerful reminder, isn't it? And it's not just Sonnet 2. You'll notice that in a lot of the sonnets, especially the early ones like 1, 5, and 12. Shakespeare uses these incredible nature metaphors to depict time as this creeping force that slowly consumes everything. It's almost like he's watching a beautiful garden being overtaken by weeds.
It is pretty bleak when you put it that way.
No,
but then there's also this amazing sense of defiance. Like Shakespeare believes that art can offer a kind of immortality.
That's the incredible tension that's in these sonnets, that constant push and pull between destruction and creation. Sonnets like 17, 18, and 55, they explore how poetry, how art itself, can capture beauty and preserve it. It's like he's saying, time might try to erase you, but my words will keep you alive.
It makes me think about how we take photos and videos today, almost like our own attempts to freeze time and hold on to moments. Do you think Shakespeare had a similar intention with his sonnets?
It's a fascinating question, isn't it? I mean, the sonnets definitely suggest that Shakespeare saw his poetry as a way to defy mortality. But of course, there's always more to uncover, like this mysterious fair youth figure who appears in so many of the sonnets.
Ah, yes. The fair youth. Who is this person? A lover? A close friend? A muse? I mean, the debate has been raging for centuries, right?
Exactly. Scholars have been trying to decipher the fair youth's identity for ages. But what we can say for sure is that the speaker's feelings are intense, almost bordering on obsession at times. Take Sonnet 20, for example. Shakespeare describes the fair youth using language that is traditionally attributed to female beauty, which creates this intriguing ambiguity about the nature of their relationship.
That's really interesting. It definitely adds another layer to the sonnets. Knowing that Shakespeare was playing with gender roles and expectations, especially for his time.
Absolutely. It reminds us that these poems were written in a very specific cultural context, one that might have been more restrictive than ours in certain ways.
Yeah.
But even within those limitations, Shakespeare manages to create these incredibly complex and nuanced portraits of human relationships. Speaking of complex relationships, let's not forget about the Dark Lady. She's a whole other story, isn't she?
Right. And she challenges everything we've seen with the fair youth. She's described as this unconventional beauty with features that don't fit the typical standards of the time.
Exactly. And the speaker's feelings for her are just as complicated, perhaps even more so, than his feelings for the fair youth. It's a whirlwind of desire, jealousy, and fascination.
So we've got these two contrasting figures, the fair youth and the Dark Lady, and all this intense emotion swirling around them. But there's also this sense that Shakespeare's using these relationships to explore something bigger, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And that's where we start to move beyond just the romantic aspects of the sonnets. Because while love and beauty are major themes, they're really just the starting point for Shakespeare to dive into deeper questions about human nature, the passage of time, and the power of art itself.
It's amazing how these seemingly simple love poems can certainly open up into these vast philosophical landscapes. It's like those Russian nesting dolls. You open one, and there's another one inside, and another.
That's true. And one of those inner dolls, so to speak, is this theme of will that runs throughout the sonnets. And it's not just about willpower or being stubborn. Shakespeare uses will to mean so many different things: desire, determination, even legacy. And sometimes it feels like a sly nod to his own name, like he's embedding a secret code within the poems.
Wow, that's so clever. Like a hidden signature. Or a wink to those who are really paying attention. Is that something that scholars generally agree on? Or is it more of a fun theory?
There's definitely debate, as with anything Shakespeare, but the wordplay is undeniable. Sonnets 135 and 136, for example, are practically overflowing with puns and double meanings, all around will. It shows you just how much power Shakespeare believed language could hold, how it could contain multiple truths at once.
It's like he's playing this intricate game with words. And he's inviting us to play along, to decipher the hidden meanings. But it's not all fun and games, right? There's a darker side to the sonnets, too, where that wordplay turns inward and becomes almost painfully self-aware.
You're picking up on something really important there. There are a number of sonnets where Shakespeare seems to wrestle with his own flaws, where the tone shifts from playful to confessional. Sonnets like 62, 66, and 111 are full of self-criticism, feelings of inadequacy, and even a longing for death.
You know, I've always struggled with Sonnet 66. That line, tired with all these, for restful death I cry. It's just so heavy, so raw. It makes you realize that even someone as brilliant as Shakespeare had moments of deep despair.
Exactly, and that's what makes these sonnets so relatable. Even centuries later, they remind us that these struggles, these doubts and anxieties, are a universal part of the human experience. Even geniuses aren't immune to them. It's almost as if by acknowledging his own darkness, Shakespeare makes it safer for us to explore our own terror.
It's like he's saying, hey, I'm going through some stuff too, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's not all gloom and doom, right? We can't forget about that diss track you mentioned earlier. Tell me more about that.
Yes, Sonnet 94. It's definitely one of the most scathing and memorable sonnets in the entire sequence. It's like Shakespeare took all of his pent-up frustration with some unnamed person and channeled it all into this incredibly pointed critique.
I love how you call it a diss track. Can you give us a taste of the lyrical venom he's spitting?
He compares this person, or perhaps group of people, to lilies that fester, smell far worse than weeds. It's such a brilliant image, and it cuts deep because it highlights this hypocrisy, this idea that outward appearances can be deceiving.
Talk about shade. I'm dying to know who he had in mind. Do we have any clues? Any juicy gossip from the Elizabethan era?
Unfortunately, Shakespeare keeps us guessing. He never names names, which of course just adds to the intrigue. It could have been a rival playwright, a disloyal friend, even a patron who turned on him. We're left to speculate, which makes it all the more fun.
It definitely sparks the imagination. And it reminds us that even though these sonnets are hundreds of years old, the emotions and situations they depict are still so relevant today.
That's one of the things I find most fascinating about Shakespeare, his ability to tap into these universal human experiences. Love, loss, betrayal, ambition, and to express them with such raw honesty and poetic brilliance.
It makes you wonder what Shakespeare would write about if he were alive today. Imagine the sonnets he could craft about social media, climate change, or even artificial intelligence.
What a thought. It really makes you realize that while the world has changed drastically in the last 4 centuries, the fundamental questions Shakespeare wrestled with are still with us. The sonnets remind us that we're all part of this grand, messy, beautiful human tapestry connected across time and space.
You know, it's incredible to think that these poems written so long ago can still resonate with us on such a deep level. But I think a big part of that is because of Shakespeare's mastery of language. It's not just what he's saying, but it's how he's saying it.
Absolutely. Shakespeare's use of language is one of the things that makes his sonnets so timeless. He's a master of imagery, metaphor, and wordplay, weaving these incredibly vivid tapestries with his words.
You know, we've talked a lot about specific themes and ideas, but I'd love to hear more about the actual language. Do you have a favorite example of how Shakespeare uses imagery or metaphor in a sonnet?
Oh, there's so many to choose from, but one that always comes to mind for me is Sonnet 73, where Shakespeare compares himself to late autumn. Yellow leaves, or none or few do hang, upon those boughs which shake against the cold. It's such a poignant and beautiful image of aging, the way he captures that feeling of vulnerability and approaching winter.
Wow. That's beautiful. I can practically feel the chill in the air just hearing those words. It's like he's painting a picture with his language.
Exactly. And it's not just visual imagery. He also uses sound and rhythm to create specific effects. Think about Sonnet 116, with its famous lines, "Let me not take the marriage of true minds, admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds." The repetition of those hard consonant sounds, the way the words almost clink against each other, it creates this sense of strength, an unyielding commitment.
It's like you can hear the vows being exchanged, that
Yep.
sense of solidity
Yeah.
and permanence.
Precisely. And that's what I find so fascinating about studying Shakespeare's language. It's like peeling back layer after layer of meaning, discovering new nuances and connections with every reading.
It's amazing how much depth and complexity he packs into those 14 lines. It really makes you appreciate the power of words, how they can move us, challenge us, and even change us.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's ultimately what makes the sonnets so enduring. They're not just beautiful poems, they're invitations to explore the depths of human experience, to grapple with the big questions that have haunted us for centuries.
So if someone is listening to this and they've never really explored Shakespeare's sonnets before, what would you say to encourage them to take the plunge?
I'd say don't be intimidated. Approach the sonnets with curiosity and an open mind. You don't need to be a scholar to appreciate their beauty and their power. Just start reading and allow yourself to be swept away by the language, the imagery, and the emotions that Shakespeare so masterfully evokes.
I love that advice. And maybe even have a little fun with it. Try reading a sonnet out loud. Listen to how the words sound, or even better, get a friend and read them to each other. You might be surprised at what you discover.
That's a great idea. There's nothing quite like sharing the experience of great literature with others. It can spark new insights and create a sense of connection that transcends time and space.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the extraordinary world of Shakespeare's sonnets. It's been a journey of discovery and delight, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. Remember, the world of Shakespeare's sonnets is vast and full of wonder. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep allowing those 400-year-old words to speak to your heart and mind